Good morning, my name is Hugh Van Is, originally from Antwerp, Belgium. I moved to Thailand in July of 1987 as a 16-year-old, together with my parents, as my father found a new employment here in Thailand. So, as I explained, moving here as a 16-year-old in July of 1987, after spending first 16 years of my life in Antwerp, Belgium, was a bit of a culture shock, to say the least. Right away, within the first month, while we were waiting for our container of personal belongings to arrive from Belgium, we spent a month in the Ambassador Hotel. And in August that year, I started at International School Bangkok, which at the time was in Sukhumvit Soi 15, which was for me quite a change, because while in Belgium you have to choose a second language once you enter high school, I luckily chose English at the time, but I could have easily chosen French. So being able to speak French, and I think a good thing in Belgium is also any program on the TV, be it from America or English, it's in the original language with subtitles in Dutch. So I think that, together with learning it in school, kind of helped me with English. But then arriving here as a 16-year-old with a limited knowledge of the language, it was a bit of a challenge in the beginning to also have mathematics, biology, chemistry, all those kinds of subjects in English as well. So it took a little bit of getting used to it, but we persevered, and you know, the rest, like they say, is history. From the very first month that we moved into our condo in Sukhumvit Soi 11, my father arranged for a Thai teacher to come and teach my brother and I the Thai language. So we did that for 6 months, 3 times a week, an hour before going to school, which was early mornings. But that gave us the basics, and the rest is mostly addition of vocabulary in Thai. Luckily, there is no tenses to speak of like they have in English and French and Dutch, for that matter. It's all the same, just put tomorrow or yesterday, so that helped. But it's a tonal language, you know, the 5 tones in Thai, which for a tone-deaf person like myself is a bit difficult, but we managed. And I know that sometimes my pronunciation might not be the correct tone in Thai, but that's due to my tone deafness, so I also don't sing, even upon request, because it's very tonal. So, you know, spending the first couple of years here was very exciting. After graduating from International School Bangkok, at that time it was only ABAC, Assumption University, that had an English program. Nowadays all major Thai international universities have an international program now, but back in the day it was only ABAC. So I went there and I got myself a degree in business administration with general management as a major, and then just started working, first in sales, and then I had an opportunity to start working for a Belgian company that was producing shrimp food. So they produced food for the shrimp industry, which is rather large here in Thailand. And that was in Pitsenloek. So I moved with my then fiancée to Pitsenloek and lived there for 5-6 years working, and our daughter was born there, our firstborn. And then after 5 years, we got pregnant with our second, our little son. And then we decided to come back to Bangkok, because, you know, in Pitsenloek, while it was a very nice 5-6 years there, our support, you know, my wife is also from Bangkok, just across the river. My mom, my brother lived at the time in Bangkok, so we decided to move back and found a new job as an administration manager in a Lebanese company that made high-end jewelry. And then just, continued working and living and enjoying life in Thailand while seeing our children grow up, and that's what brought me to Thailand. So yeah, after spending the 5 years in Pitsenlook, I came back to Bangkok. Worked then for a world-renowned jewelry company called Moawat, who had been in business over 100 years, making very high-end gold and platinum jewelry with all the precious gemstones set. Did that for 2.5 years, and then I had a chance to work for another Belgian company, a company called H&A Cutting Works, which stood for Hearts and Arrows, which was a diamond polishing factory in Gemopolis Industrial Estate, where I met for the first time Erwin Hellemans, who was the managing director. The company was owned by Jean-Paul Tolkowsky, and if you're in the diamond industry, Tolkowsky is quite a famous name from the 1919, when Marcel Tolkowsky at the time invented the ideal cut diamond. Using mathematical equations, he figured out what were the perfect angles to give you the nicest diamond. And so many years later, his great-grand nephew Jean-Paul took that idea, the Tolkowsky ideal cut, and set up a manufacturing plant in Thailand. And Erwin, God bless him, he had grown the factory to about 240 workers just by himself, and they were ahead of further expansion, and he was in need for a operations director, which was right away something that matched my previous experience. So I met him the first time in February of 2004, and it went all well, and then we went for an official interview at the factory, which took 4 hours. I arrived around 2 in the afternoon and I left there about 7, and my wife was quite worried where I had gone so long, and it just clicked. Erwin was an amazing man, polished from the young age of 12, and really was somebody integral in the diamond industry. So he had been managing the factory for about 4 years. They just bought a new plot, put a newly built factory on the plot in Gemopolis, and just joining him officially on the 1st of June of 2004. And within the 6 months that I worked with him, we grew the factory. We almost doubled the factory in terms of workforce, going over close to about 450 people by the end of 2004. I will continue that story a little bit later when we come to it. Other companies that I worked for is the last 9 years until the end of 22, I worked for Swarovski, the Austrian crystal jewelry company that is renowned worldwide. When I joined them, they had been in business already well over 100 years. And what was amazing there is that the biggest highlight there is when I joined, the factory that I managed was one of the gemstones factory units, where we produced all sorts of gemstones except for the crystal, which was done at headquarters in Austria. But we were doing rubies, sapphires, cubic zirconia, topaz, a mix of quite a number of different stones, for then sending it to the jewelry manufacturers to be used in the various jewelry. And the highlight, I have 2 highlights there, is one, when I started in 2014, it was at the rollout of empowerment, employee empowerment, because we had some challenges, both internal and external. To make a long story short, within 3 years of implementing true employee empowerment, we started seeing a direct correlation between the empowerment and the business's bottom line. We improved our employee engagement scores that we had determined from a global survey. We improved from 39% engagement, which was very low, to over 90% by the time I left. And just to see the transformation that the organization went through was immense, and it clearly showed that yes, employee empowerment really has a benefit to the business, to the employees, as well as the various stakeholders. So one highlight that for me was immense was from 2010 to to 2019, they had such a thing called the Swarovski Spirit Awards. We had some spirit values integral to the business, and every year out of, back then it was over 20,000 employees worldwide, they would do a short list of candidates that fulfilled the Swarovski Spirit values. And I was the recipient in 2019, so out of 20,000 people, to be selected as 15 with 15 other people was an immense sense of pride for myself. To be able to go to the headquarters in Austria and to be treated like a true celebrity with a gala dinner and a tour of the archives, and to really receive this Swarovski Spirit Award was the crowning of my achievement working there. Now, in 2019, because before it was a family-owned company and operated, in 2019 they decided to go for a new strategy and to really completely restructure the business. So from 5 family owners of Swarovski managing each a business unit, they put it all under one Swarovski crystal umbrella. So all the different units then started reporting to one CEO and CFO. And all the retail stores were refurbished, the whole jewelry line was redesigned, and then COVID hit. So at the start of the rollout of the new rebirth of Swarovski and the strategy, we saw that, you know, one by one the retail stores around the world started to go closed. So it was a tough few years, and within the strategy you have to understand that the big jewelry factory where they produce the Swarovski jewelry is located in Ayutthaya, where they have over 5,000 employees. The business unit that I was managing, the Gemstones business unit, was located in Samut Prakan, and where I was managing about 360 people. So through the restructuring and the re-strategizing of the company, it resulted in our business unit reducing our workforce from 360 to 240 within 2020. But I saw it, you know, eventually I thought it would be our turn, which turned out to be a little bit quicker than I anticipated. At the end of 22, my business unit was pretty much closed here in Thailand, and certain processes discontinued or sent to the larger factory in Ayutthaya. So yeah, the biggest things in my career is, you know, having worked at Swarovski, having won the award, and also, you know, making the decision to, at the beginning of my career, to move to Pitsenloog and start my career in manufacturing and operations, because that's where I really fell in love with managing a production force and really getting the best out of a factory. So that's the main of my experience has always been in operations and manufacturing. So I really enjoy, because I think as a leader it's important to be able to speak to all levels of the organization. So being able to speak Thai really helped me in my career and really getting the best out of the organization by being able to address the people, because just imagine as a leader having to do everything through a translator would be quite difficult. So being able to do and speak to people really got the best out of the organization. Well, to be honest, you know, in the early days when I was working, for example, for H&A, those were very long days. You know, left before the kids went to school in the morning, arrived back home when they were already in bed. So the 5-6 years working there was really tough on the family life, but you know, I think this is part of life in a way for most people. You do have to sacrifice now and then. What I did learn from that is that you can find a better work-life balance when you can, you know, when you can make a difference. But you know, listen, if you're working in a factory and the factory is running 2 shifts 6 days a week, you know, every shift is 12 hours. It's tough for the employees to, you know, to have a work-life balance. So you try to make life at the factory or at the company as nice as possible. At the end of the day, most people spend a lot of time working, so why not make it a nice environment for people to come to? It's all about the culture you create, and how you manage your various teams. But it's definitely not easy. The writer part came a little bit later in life, when I sat on my story, which we will discuss a little bit later. But all in all, sometimes it's a challenge, but the older you are, I think the more you realize that it's like, once I saw somebody explain that life is about juggling different balls, and the ball of work is a rubber ball, because when you drop work, it will bounce back and it'll continue being there. But health, family life, if you drop one of those balls, it might not be so easy to recover from that. So try to find a balance where your work and life can coexist, while still being able to spend the time with your loved ones and friends, while giving your all at work at the same time. I have to thank my bosses at Swarovski first and foremost for implementing the concept of employee empowerment, because that resulted in quite a lot of workshops to get the various principles, to get an understanding of the various principles, to link it to the strategic direction and the financial goals of the company, to work in different methods that we were used to. So going through all those different workshops, we created a concept called circles, which if you empower your staff, then you give them the trust to do what is right for the company. So when they put together a circle concept, meaning 7 different people, without the leader, without the boss involved, 7 different people within the company, be it a head of product management or a head of production, logistics, supply chain, you name it, whatever the key focus area was, be it sustainability or improving delivery performance, or maybe focusing on your main customer to give them that extra time and attention needed, you would put these 7 individuals together that would work together jointly on these types of concepts, and they would have the authority to make decisions. So it's really about empowering your team, and having gone through these circle concepts, it would require each circle to have a facilitator. So I was happy to have the opportunity to go through a lot of training in terms of mentoring, facilitation, coaching. So after I ended my career at Swarovski at the end of December 22, after spending the first 6 months of 23 writing a second book, I decided to why not capture this, because I saw it was, empowerment was really a working concept, and I was really involved in driving that through to get the necessary benefits. I thought, why not bring this as an offer to companies here in Thailand that might be faced with some issues in terms of engagement, or maybe a high employee turnover, maybe issues from competition. Also, every company is faced now with different generations working for them. A generation X and is nearing the end of their career, while the younger generations are starting their career. But you have both in your company, in your organization, and both have different needs and wants and desires. So you need to find a way to be able to handle those different requirements and get the best out of a Gen X versus a Gen Z or a millennial. It's different needs. So how you motivate somebody in Gen X will be vastly different from motivating a millennial, and you have to find a common path that will bring everybody together. And one good thing is to align all the KPIs and all the personal goals within the team, to align it with the company's goals, because then everybody is working towards the same direction. So if they are motivated to do their best to get, for example, a bonus at the end of the year, then if they're focused and their goals are aligned with the organizations, then it's a win-win. They will get their bonus and the company wins as well by reaching our overall goals. Well, to be honest, this year is the 20th anniversary of the world's worst disaster, the Boxing Day tsunami in the south of Thailand. And on the 26th of December 2004, I went with my family to Koh Chang, luckily, because we could have easily decided to go down to the south, but our kids were still quite young and we didn't want to get on the plane and all that, so we decided to drive to Koh Chang. Now, the tsunami happened and I went to the south to find my friends. I cut my holiday short in Koh Chang, and by Wednesday the 28th in the evening I had arrived in Phuket together with the owner of the company, Jean-Paul Tolkowski, who had flown in earlier that day. Now, we'll talk about that a bit later, but why I decided to start writing this story, because spending 4 days down there in the south of Thailand looking for my friends, even now after 20 years, it's still so vividly in my mind that maybe in 2016, 2017, I decided, okay, I gotta write this down. So I started writing from the 26th itself to the 31st when I returned back to Bangkok. And just those 4 days there, I wrote down and put it in my documents folder. Didn't think about it, it was written down. I had at least put it on paper. Then maybe around 2018, my son was a teenager and he asked, "Dad, do you still have that story about the tsunami?" So I said, "Yeah, probably somewhere." I hadn't thought of it for a couple of years, so looked it up, thankfully found it in my documents. And of course, since there was an interest from my son and his friend, I decided to read through it again and added a prologue, so a beginning, as well as an end. And then, twisted it and tweaked it a bit more, and I said, okay, now it's finished. Gave it to my son and his friend. Good reviews. Okay, send it to my mom. Same thing, good reviews, really well written. Send it to a few other people who gave me also very positive reviews. So I said, let's try to get this published. And I just went on Google, publishing houses. And the first one that came up, I think, is one of the famous one in the world, is Penguin. Seemed a bit too far to reach, I believe. And then the next one in line was Olympia Publishers in the UK. Then went through their website. Oh, this looks good. Sounded also familiar. I had heard of Olympia before. And they had on their website a submit your manuscript. So I did, answered a whole load of questions, submitted it about February of 2022. And didn't hear anything. I fulfilled all the questions, put in the synopses, actually submitted the manuscript as well. Nothing came back. I said, I guess not. And totally forgot about it until late April, so almost 2 months later, all of a sudden an email in my inbox. Dear Mr. Van Ness, after careful review by the editing team, we accept your story to be published. And it was so unexpected, because I thought, even though I've been speaking English now completely since '87, it's still my second language. It's not my mother tongue, Dutch is. So I always felt it was a bit amateurish, but listen, good reviews, so why not? And being accepted by a reputed publishing house in the UK was so unexpected that I couldn't believe it at first. So basically from April 22 to the publishing date of July 23, it was the whole process of editing and choosing the cover and doing all the back office work to get it published. And then I got the first lot of authors' copies by middle of July, a few days before the actual publication date. And yeah, since then trying to promote it as much as possible. Continue to get fantastic reviews, and actually the only somewhat negative review is that the book is too short. And as you can see, it is really a very thin book. But I figured, the attention span nowadays is so short with all the short bits that we have. I figured I keep it nice and short so that people don't have an excuse not to read it because it's too big. So you can finish it in an hour and a half and be done with it. So receiving the only negative review kind of spurred me to extend the story. So again, beginning of later in 23, once I started getting those reviews, I decided to extend the story. So now I have double the size, adding more details and more nitbits about the story, about the quest, also with some reflections at the end. And now, looking for a new publisher, because I'm not very happy with Olympia, but now looking for a new publishing house that is keen or to help me, or a literary agent to help me now, maybe an anniversary edition or a author's edition, to now find a way to publish this extended version. Right, so the reason why I decided to write my book is that it was such a horrible experience that I felt I had to write it down. So as I explained earlier, my family and I had arrived at Koh Chang around 10 o'clock on the 26th of December, waiting for the ferry. We're just sitting having a noodle soup in a little restaurant there. Saw on the TV in the corner and heard the first time about an earthquake in Banda Aceh in Indonesia. No mentioning yet about the tsunami. So listen, it's horrible, but you're ready after 4.5 hours in the car with 2 small kids. You're ready to get to the hotel. So we didn't think anything of it. Got to the hotel, just dropped everything in the room, put on our bathing suits, straight to the beach. Just spent the whole day at the beach, not realizing what was going on, because another thing that was a bit odd was that I had forgotten for the first time my mobile phone at home. And then, in the evening it got dark quite early. Got back to the room, gave the children a shower, turned on the TV while we were waiting for our room service to arrive, and only then that we realized the extent of the horror that happened earlier that day. So right away, luckily my wife had brought her phone, so right away I was trying to call Erwin, who I had known had gone scuba diving in the south. I remember him discussing that he went to the Similan Islands for diving, but not really clear where exactly he was. So I was on the phone with Jean-Paul, the boss, who said he would be coming back from Beijing to Bangkok as soon as he could. And that first night, so basically the night of the 26th, I spent until about 4 o'clock in the morning just looking at the local news, which was basically on a loop, trying to catch any mentioning of what had happened in the Similan Islands. The next day on the phone with the general manager of the factory, trying to piece together, okay, where were they actually staying. He went directly to the factory, which was closed for Christmas. And luckily that Erwin had booked his hotel through the company, and there we found out that he had booked his hotel in Khao Lak in the Sofitel. And then it was, that the first kind of hit that we absorbed is like, okay, he was at the worst hit area in the south of Thailand. So the next day, Tuesday the 27th, was spent the whole day on the phone trying to reach them, and both him and his wife Sabrina, their phones were on, they were ringing, but went straight to voicemail. So we figured as long as they were not answering the phone, they should be okay. So listen, it was just the second day of our holiday. We had booked until the 2nd of January, and my wife on the afternoon of the 27th told me, said, Hugh, you have to go look for them. Their family is in Belgium, they don't have anybody else here, you have to go look for them. So we talked to the reception, say, listen, explain what had happened. Luckily they gave us a voucher to be used later on, fully understanding the gravity of the situation. So first thing Wednesday morning, the 28th, we drove back to Bangkok as quickly as we could, reaching there early afternoon, dropped my wife and my kids at home, packed an overnight bag and drove straight to Don Mueang, where I got on the first flight to Phuket, which was just a flight basically at 7 p.m. And there it was already the first indication, you know, first of all the TV monitors around Don Mueang were of course showing CNN and BBC, all the news. And there we saw many people, or where I saw many people that had planned their holiday to go to Phuket, changed to go to Samui, which was in the Gulf, which was not affected thankfully by the tsunami. So I finally got on the plane, which was completely empty. It was me and two other people on this plane. Arrived in Phuket airport around 8 p.m. And Jean-Paul, my boss, had arrived in Phuket around 3 p.m. from Bangkok, and he had rented a taxi and drove straight to Khao Lak, which is a 2.5, 3 hour drive, reaching there at night and being stopped by the local police, not being able to go on the beach road there. So he turned back, so we basically met up around 11 p.m. on Wednesday the 28th. And while I was driving very early morning before we set out from Koh Chang, I received a call from Kun Pot. Kun Pot was the driver of Erwin and Sabrina, who had been their driver for the 4 years they had lived in Thailand. And he told me, he said, Kun Yut, I'm sorry, but I can't stay in Bangkok not knowing what is happening to my boss and his wife. Do you mind if I take the company car and drive down to Phuket? I say, yes, please drive carefully, take a friend, so you don't have, so you're not alone in the car. And he took a guy from the factory called Songkran. They drove down to Phuket in one go. And luckily, when Jean-Paul reached Khao Lak as far as he could, basically at the Sofitel where he could not enter, Pot and Songkran arrived with the car. So he was able to then meet up with Pot and Songkran, drive back to Phuket, where I had then already arranged for a hotel for us to stay at. So we joined up at an evening, a late dinner at the hotel, woke up 6 o'clock in the morning on the 29th and set out, stopped at a pharmacy, got gloves, masks, disinfectant, everything we could think of to take with us. And then we drove down to the Sofitel in Khao Lak. And when we reached there, you know, I don't know if you ever gone on a trip to Phuket, from Phuket to Khao Lak, but you go through nature, you don't see anything, nothing, all green, all beautiful. And then you get on to the mountain road, which you need to cross, and then you come down at the seaside. And when we arrived at the seaside on the 29th, so 3 days after the disaster, it was an immense devastation. It was destruction. It was cars on houses, all wood, all electricity poles broken down. It was almost impassable, this road. So we were sitting there shocked, driving by 5 kilometers an hour to the Sofitel, where we met up with the team and said, listen, we know for a fact that on the 26th, because the day before Erwin had called his brother in Belgium to tell him they were going to go scuba diving on the 26th. And so, where is your scuba diving department? Oh no, we don't have, the Sofitel claimed. They outsourced it to a scuba diving company in Takua Pa, down in a little village in Khao Lak, about 30 kilometers from the hotel. So we set out again, drove very slowly through the devastation to Takua Pa town. And we got there on the way, stopping at every hospital we got to, going into the wards, trying to look for them, asking the local doctors if they had these two people there. We went even into the morgue to find them. Luckily, at the time we thought, couldn't find them. So we finally found the dive shop in Takua Pa. And there we find out that at the morning of the 26th, the boat that should have taken them out to sea and to scuba diving had a faulty engine, so they could not have gone out. And that's where we kind of realized, damn, this is not good news. Because as long as we were not able to reach them, but the phones were still ringing, we thought, because they were such jovial people, such kind-hearted people, we thought they were probably helping others that were in more need than themselves, not realizing to call home. So we were still in a positive mindset to a certain extent, but then hearing that they could not have gone out, we thought, okay, the only thing they could have done then, because they would have set out at 6 o'clock in the morning, so by 6:30, 7 o'clock, knowing they will not be going scuba diving that morning, the only thing they could have done is go back to the hotel. So while Jean-Paul and I were talking to the activities director of the Sofitel, Pot and Songkran were also talking to others in the village, and they had heard that most people that had perished from the Sofitel hotel had been taken to the local temple in Tacuapar, so which was just 5 minutes down the road. So we said, okay, let's go there. And now it's already 3:30, 4 o'clock on the 29th. We arrive at the temple and we see rows and rows and rows of bodies wrapped in an off-white shroud, tied in 3 places: the feet, the waist and the neck. And we open the car door, and the smell of death, which is indescribable, you cannot compare it to any bad smell, it just hit us in the face, and that made it even tougher. So we put on our gloves, our mask, we had the Vapo Rub, put it on the mask so much that our eyes were tearing, but still you could smell it, you could not get away from this smell. And the 4 of us, we set out through those rows, and while most of the victims were tightly wound in these shrouds and rope, some of the shrouds had loosened, and what you saw, the scene was just horror, like a Stephen King movie or zombie movie. I mean, it was the 29th, 3 days in those temperature, in the water. All the bodies had bloated, were black, and were left unrecognizable. And I'm going through there like a zombie. I see Jean-Paul do the same. Pot and Songkran are actually on their haunches trying to open shrouds, and I'm just going through this saying, how the hell am I going to start this? What I saw of open shrouds I could not recognize, and I'm thinking to myself, do I really have to start untying all those knots and opening them and trying to find? So I just going in an absolute blur for about half an hour, not really knowing where to start. And all of a sudden I hear Pot calling out, Kunyut, Jean-Paul, come here. I think I found Erwin. So we go through the bodies and we end up at where Pot was sitting, and he goes, look, a shirt of body glove. But listen, you could not recognize him. And Erwin was a big guy, a little bit shorter than me, also completely shaven. And a few years before the disaster, he had a teeth bleaching. So big guy, 100+ kilo, bald, white teeth. I thought we should be able to recognize him and find him, but that was not the case. The only way we recognized him was the way Pot was describing how he was dressed. So he was wearing a shirt of body glove, which I had seen him wear before. Most people, when they wear shorts, they just let the shirt out, but he always tucked them in, even with shorts. So he had the belt, and he said, Kunyut, look, he has the shirt tucked in, and look, the sandals, he always wears these sandals. And then we saw the ring on his ring finger, and with great difficulty Pot removed it, cleaned it off, and saw in there Erwin and Sabrina forever. We had found Erwin. My God, how is this possible? So I tried to console Jean-Paul a bit, who had it very difficult because Jean-Paul and Erwin were childhood friends. And while Pot and Songkran continued looking for Sabrina, I told Jean-Paul, listen, I will deal with the authorities here. Why don't you go and try to call Belgium and inform the family that we found Erwin, which was difficult to do. First of all, yes, we had mobile phones, but so many people on the bandwidth was not enough, so you had to try 10, 15 times before you could actually get a line through. And I went to all the authorities on the site, gave them the details that yes, we found a friend, so they took him apart on the site, and then the doctors went through it, and I just continued with one page of documentation after another. And then it became dark, and I said, so I was on the way to walk from where they had all the authorities and completed all the documentation that we needed for Erwin. And while I was walking back to where Pot and Songkran were still going and it was getting dusk, all of a sudden I hear a shout, another tsunami in Thai. Tsunami Malau, tsunami Malau. And I just stood rooted to the spot. I mean, this was 3 days after I heard, that, with earthquakes you have aftershock, so it is a possibility. And I just stood rooted to the spot, and I saw a few Thai guys just run up into a tree, and I was overweight at the time, I couldn't do that. And within a few minutes it started to calm down. It was false alarm. But I just, if it had come, so I understand what they had gone through, because nobody at the time heard of a tsunami and the effects and how it looked like. Now, of course, everybody is aware, but back in those days, tsunami, yes, that's something that happens in Japan 100, 200 years ago. So nobody really realized what was happening. So I can understand the shock just by being there, hearing the word a tsunami is coming. But now, as long, we were there for at least 2-3 hours, right? And you have to understand that every 5 minutes, another pickup truck, another big 6-wheeler arrives at the temple and adds more bodies to the already many lines that were lying there. So it was just getting more and more, it was getting dark. I started seeing people with flashlights going through. So I went to find Jean-Paul and I said, listen, Jean-Paul, come on, we found Erwin, we're all stressed out. This is no way we can do this in the dark. Why don't we go back to Phuket and maybe, go to the district office, find the Belgian embassy representative and maybe get the ball going there. So we decided to go back to Phuket, 3 hours in the dark. Arrived, I think, there around 9 or 10 p.m. Went around the district office. There we spoke with many people that had gone and had experienced the tsunami firsthand. And one of the saddest things I heard was a group of divers that were sitting there on the ground eating some sticky rice and chicken, and they explained that they went out scuba diving, they were on the boat, they felt the wave to see it, then 50 meters, 100 meters down, start to turn. So we thought that if only Erwin and Sabrina had the luck to be able to go scuba diving at that very moment, they would have survived. Unfortunately, the engine was faulty, was broken, so they could not, and that's why they missed it. So we got to the hotel back around 1 o'clock in the morning, and you can't believe the smell of the temple, of the rotting bodies. I could still taste it. And probably because I was a smoker and smoking in that kind of environment probably aggravated it. But even then, 8 hours after leaving the temple, I could still taste it in my mouth. So shower after shower, brushing my teeth, nothing helped. So by the time we fell asleep was maybe around 3. Woke up again at 6 the next morning. Since we had a late dinner, nobody was hungry, so we just got some coffees from 7 and set out again to go look for Sabrina. So this is now the 30th of December. We go there, we decide to go first to the Sofitel, and we got there around 9 a.m. and there was nobody there, just a guard with police tape across. He woke up and said, listen, he said, nobody here. I said, yeah, but there was like 10 bodies lying there waiting for pickup to the temple. I said, can we have a look? Yeah, please do. And luck in bad luck, I don't know what we were fortunate. We found Sabrina again, only recognizable by the clothes she was wearing and confirmation by her wedding ring, which was also engraved Erwin Sabrina. So we ended up waiting for about an hour. for the pickup trucks to arrive, we say, hey, this is our friend, please take him to the Takuapa temple, make sure that she's right away put aside. So we followed this makeshift hearse to the temple, which was about an hour, and there we right away spoke to the authorities, did again all the paperwork. Jean-Paul once again having to call now the parents of Sabrina with the bad news. And then the authorities said, listen, you still need a death certificate. I say, okay, where can we get that? Oh, you have to go to the district office in Kaolack. Again, half an hour drive. And when we reached the office, which was again a district office, as you know the way they look, right next to a big football field, and it was full of army helicopters, private helicopters, ambulances, police, you name it. It was such a hectic, chaotic mess that we just said, okay, I'll go inside with Pot. We took those two letters that we received in the temple. When finally it was our turn, they typed it up, and then, okay, one step closer, right? Then the next day, that was the 30th, so now it was about afternoon of the 30th, we had the two death certificates, we went back to the temple, and while we were at the district office, we found a couple of guys that were willing to take the coffins from Takuapa temple all the way to Phuket airport. So we were driving the 3 hours behind this pickup truck through the mountains from Takuapa all the way to Kaolack, all the way to Phuket. And when we got to Phuket airport, okay, so now it was the 30th of December in the evening. We had both bodies with us, but the family wanted the bodies to be repatriated back to Belgium. So luck again, I don't know why or how, but the brother of Erwin, Gerrit, called Jean-Paul and said, hey, there is a professional repatriation company present in Phuket. They're from Belgium. They're professionals. They do this for a living. Here is the number. Please call them. They're called Van Grunderbeek. So Jean-Paul called them, and it was funny because he was on the phone. Yes, we are in Phuket airport. Yes, we are too. And they were basically just standing 5 meters from each other. We met up. They took us to a warehouse where they received the specialized coffins, and then they took the bodies to the far side of the airport, where thankfully they took over from us, and they prepared the body. They arranged for the bodies to be shipped the next day, the 31st of December, back to Belgium. It was too late to catch a flight back to Bangkok for Jean-Paul and myself, so stayed one more night in Phuket, and then the next morning we rushed to Phuket airport to find our flight and flew back to Bangkok. So all in all, it was a horrible story, but even now, 20 years later, knowing that some families never found their loved ones, I think at least we were able to get some closure by able to find them. But yeah, it was horrible and such a sad turn of events, knowing that it could have been completely different had they only been able to go out scuba diving. So all that, those 4 days down there was such a horrible experience that, yeah, like I said, a few years later I decided, because it always, every December you think about it, and 5-year, 10-year, 15-year anniversaries, you get, those documentaries on whatever, National Geographic, Discovery Channel, it comes in the news, CNN, BBC, so you're always reminded of that. So I said I had to write this down, and yeah, like I said, turned it into a book. Well, for sure, I think one key element and one credit that for sure I have to give is to my wife, that said we have to go find them, first and foremost. Secondly, if you're in a position where you can help somebody, even though there might be others that can do the same thing. If you know you're there and you can help, you should. And it's really leaving your comfort zone, right? You didn't know what to expect. You had seen all the horrible images already on TV over and over again, so you knew what to expect. But to see it on TV versus being there in actuality, in reality, was a whole different thing. It tells you that sometimes life throws you a curveball, and it's up to you to handle it the best way possible. And it's never going to be perfect, but as long as you know that you did your best, you tried to help, that's all that matters. And many times afterwards, I was again not thankfully in such a horrible experience, but there were times later on in life that I was also in a position where I could help, where I had the choice, should I or should I not, and I decided to just go for it. And one thing that really stayed with me is part of the whole empowerment drive that we went through at Swarovski. One of the key principles was, first of all, you have to be self-driven. It has to start with you. Don't wait for your boss to do it, just do it yourself. And in order to be self-driven, you have to leave your comfort zone. I don't know if you've seen that little diagram with your comfort zone, challenge, panic, right? The further you go away from your comfort zone, the more challenging it becomes, or the more, even to the point of you might start to panic. But if you do it in small increments, your comfort zone just enlarges and it becomes more comfortable to go out of your way to do things. So that kind of stayed with me to try to make a difference where you can. Life is too short. That's another thing that really made it clear. I mean, Erwin and Sabrina were in 33 and 34, early 30s, ahead of most of their life, very successful in what they were doing, and all of a sudden Mother Nature puts a stop to that. So it can happen anytime, anywhere, anyhow. So be prepared as much as possible, but also don't live your life fearing that this could happen. Take it one day at a time, make the best of every day, and try to improve yourself continuously. So that's, I think, the major learning I had, and that stayed with me, is that sometimes you need to get out of your comfort zone and go the extra mile. And if you do that, you can apply that to any aspect of your life, be it personal life, professional life, in your career. Go the extra mile, do the extra thing. Be a gentleman, be a nice guy, treat others like you want to be treated. And I think the world would be a lot better place if only people would treat each other nicely. Look for similarities, what brings us together, rather than the differences, right? Right, well, in the meantime, I've actually wrote a few more books, but after finding out that my first book would be published, it kind of motivated me to start on my second book, which is again a non-fiction, describing my life living here for almost 4 decades, right? Arriving as a 16-year-old teenager and basically living life here as a child of an expat, going through school, work, life, marriage, children. It's explaining quite a few anecdotes, funny things, strange things, some out of body experiences almost, and just describing like a little bit like a culture shock, but it's again about my personal experience here in Thailand and how I experienced the change of living in Belgium to living here in Thailand, and then just recalling all these experiences or anecdotes or happenings that I went through while here in Thailand. It's 3 times the size of this, so definitely a lot longer. And that kind of got me writing more. And besides that, which I've renamed to, instead of Remember That Time in Bangkok, I've renamed it Thailand Thrills, to make it a bit more maybe easier to recall what it might be about. So that's something I wrote, and earlier this year I decided to start my first work of fiction. Tried because the first two books I wrote almost from memory, so it was really, I'm not saying easy, it was more straightforward to really list it all, what had happened step by step. Whereas my first work of fiction, which is of course also based in Bangkok, was a completely different experience. You know, there you have to connect to your creative muse, so to speak, and I just had a broad outline and I started writing it, and I figured, okay, I need to explain the backstory first, and it just came chapter by chapter, page by page, and when I got stuck I left it go and started again the next morning, and I was in such a creative drive that I turned it into a trilogy, and they're proper size books about this, a family saga located here in Bangkok, and it starts during the Vietnam War in 1968, with how the parents met, and then the children in book 2, and then the children take over, and it's 3 books called Bangkok Barons is the first one, Bangkok Karma is the second, and the last part is Bangkok Shadows. So now I'm looking for a literary agent or a publishing house that is keen to work with me to first maybe publish the extended version of Hell in Paradise, then my second book, Thailand Thrills, about 4 decades in Thailand, and then my trilogy of fiction books. So maybe some of your viewers that seem interested could perhaps help me, give me some guidance on getting those published, because like I said, it was good that Olympia accepted my book and it's published, so it's official, but they did not really fulfill their requirements, so I'm looking for some other representation, let's say like that. Of course, we write to tell our story, and I think one of the nicest things is that if you ask a friend, even if it's not published, a friend or a family member to read it, and they give you good reviews, even though you've asked them, listen, even if you don't like it or there's anything wrong with it, please tell me, they still think it's really nicely written. That motivates me, and I think being accepted for publication on my first book motivating me to start writing the second book. And just there was a period that I was at home, I had some hip issues, so I couldn't sit unless I had pain in my leg, so I was lying down with my laptop, and I put myself the goal, I should start writing something every day, be it 1 chapter, 1 paragraph, 1 page, just something every day. And I started that, and that kind of motivated me and generated this work of fiction. And it was such a nice experience that, not knowing how it's gonna end and really following the story as it appeared, as the muse was whispering in my ear, that was a really very nice experience that I wanted to continue, and that's why it turned into a trilogy of books, but never expecting that it would be so much. And again, sending it to, and it was really funny because with my mom, I mean, the reason I started writing in the first place is because I love to read, and that's because of my mom. She's a big reader, a big book lover, and my first book, I remember arriving in Thailand, she brought most of her books with her, but they were all Dutch language. So I just picked out one Stephen King. I remember Stephen King, Thinner. That was my first real book that I didn't have to read through school, that I wanted to read. And I was hooked, and I read one more in Dutch, and then after that I started reading the books in English as they were originally written. So that kind of gave me the idea, okay, every time I write a few paragraphs, a few pages, a few chapters, I would send it to my mom, and she would read it and maybe pick out a few mistakes, which she did. And she was so enthusiastic about wanting to know more about the story, even though I didn't really realize where it was going to go next. It was such a nice experience that I did it for the 3 books. And to the point where she said, Hugh, you gotta stop that, because especially me, you know, if you send one at another chapter around 9 o'clock in the evening, I want to read it, but then I'm dreaming of it. She goes many nights that she was dreaming of the characters in my story, which was a very nice compliment to have. So yeah, that's the nice thing, is getting the reviews, getting some feedback from people on how they experience the story, which is all the motivation I need. It would be lovely to find a publishing house to publish those works as well, but if not, maybe eventually I'll publish them myself. But you know, the good thing about publishing houses is that they give you the necessary editorial help, which I didn't really get with Olympia. So yeah, that's the things I enjoy about creating a story and just seeing where it goes. So I wonder, you know, other well-known authors like Wilbur Smith or Stephen King, what is their process? You know, do they map it out? Do they structure it? Do they know exactly what's going to happen? That I don't know. So I'm seeking for, yeah, maybe some other writers to understand their process and their writing process. I think a leader is somebody that manages a team that needs to get the best out of a team, and how you do that is not by micromanaging. Especially if you're, you know, many times if you're the top executive, you know, you'll have meetings and discussions with your middle management, but does a top leader really go down to the floor and listen, takes a pulse of the organization from the employee's perspective? Usually not. So what I believe makes a good leader is one that listens, that provides his team with the trust and autonomy to make decisions, especially if he can create an environment where open discussions take place. Because many times if somebody makes a mistake, they're so focused on why did you make this mistake, and finger pointing and blaming, but you know, the mistake already happened. In my view, a mistake is actually showing that we're doing something right, because if you don't do anything, then you don't make mistakes. So if you're making a mistake, the only thing we should be able to look at is, okay, it happened already, we can't change that. So what can we learn from it? How can we prevent it from happening again? And get the person that made the mistake involved. And tell him, you know, put his mind at ease that he's not going to get salary cut or scolded or a warning letter, all that. No, listen, I want to understand. Tell us what happened, and you know, was it a machine error or was it human error? Could be a lot of factors involved. So find out, because every mistake is an opportunity to improve. And if you do that consistently by providing an open organization where things can be discussed and we work together as a team, that I think is what a leader should have. You know, they always talk about empathy, right? Emotional intelligence, not IQ but EQ. I think that is important. People are working for you as a leader. They're working for you for what? To make a life, to earn a living, right? They don't usually come because they love it, right? There's a motive behind it, and most of that is financially driven. Especially here in factories, production operators, it's all about production incentives, that bonus at the end of the year, right? They want to earn as much as they can. So knowing that we have 24 hours a day, 8 of which are sleeping, so basically you have 16 hours a day, half of which is spent at the factory or at the company, and many more times more than just 8 hours. So how can we make it an environment where people want to come to, right? Make it nice, be nice to people, get the best out of them, listen to them if they have an issue. Don't just say, oh, we've tried that before, because then they won't come with further ideas. You would be surprised, especially in a manufacturing environment, you'd be surprised how much the production operator can contribute to the success of the organization. Don't just think, oh, but they're production. No. The best way to describe it for everybody in an organization, because you might have the other side where an HR or an IT or a finance manager or a finance department in a production company thinks they don't contribute because it's all about the output, right? We make so many pieces and that's where our income is coming from. But you have to tell them, listen, without finance we don't pay our suppliers, we don't have the money to be operational. Without HR you don't have a salary, social security, all the welfare. Without IT we don't have computers. So the easiest way to describe is just show them a diagram of an engine with all the different wheels named as a department. And you could say your cog in the wheel in the engine might turn smoothly, but if you're not aligned with the rest of your departments, you'll get stuck. So you have to make sure that everybody moves and turns at the same speed, and that's why I said earlier, align everybody towards the company's goals, because then you will get and you will create an area of collaboration where people want to collaborate, where people want to go the extra mile, because they know that at the end of the year, if we reach the company's goals and KPIs, they will be rewarded. Performance-based, right? We perform our duties, we reach the goals for the company, so everybody gets a reward, be it 2 months bonus or whatever it may be. And that's, I think, what a leader needs to be. Is at the end of the day, it's not the leader that does it, it's the people in the organization that do it, day in, day out. So make it a nice environment, treat them well, provide them with all the necessary incentives that they need to be motivated to go that extra mile, and you'll book the successes that you need. Buy Bitcoin? No. Advice to younger self. It's to, when I was younger, I got stressed more easily than I do now. I mean, I've always been a very calm person, trying not to, show anger when I don't have to. But when I was younger, I was a little bit more hot-headed than now. I was, prone to stressing myself out more than I should have at the time. So if I could give myself, my 20-year-old self, some advice, is don't stress the small stuff. You will get through it. Just keep believing in yourself, that you have all the necessary tools to be successful. So don't doubt yourself, push on and keep believing. Just believe in yourself. You don't have to believe in a higher power, believe in yourself, and that's all that matters. And as long as you can be self-aware, that will be all the big help that you can have in your life, is being self-aware and believing in yourself that you are a good person and that you can do good things. Listen to your team, listen to your elders, find a mentor or a coach, even if it's not in the same organization. Find somebody that you can trust, that has the necessary experience, where you can learn from. It's always good to have somebody that backs you up in time of need, and many times you can find that in the company you work for. But if not, then find somebody outside, a trusted friend from the family or your father or whatever, somebody that has been there and done that, so to speak. And for a leader, new leaders or new management, get a pulse in the organization. Listen to as many people as possible before you form an opinion. Because at the end of the day, it's an opinion. Many people have different opinions, but you can learn a lot by listening. And don't listen to respond, listen to understand. Because most of the time when you have a conversation and you are saying something, it's like, oh yeah, I need to say that now because I don't, or whatever, right? No, try to listen to understand what is this person trying to tell you. Try to read between the lines. Try to observe the body language, because that's, I think, is important, to see the body language, how they are acting, how they are reacting, and yeah, focus on that. Is focus on the individual. But I think the best advice is to just listen, even if you're in a department that has nothing to do with another department, you know, go learn, see what they're going through, right? Especially if you're a globally diverse company, or you are in different locations around the world, you only see things from the perspective of you, right, in your silo or niche or position. You don't know what the other people, your colleagues, are going through, so learn from them. Listen to them. What are their pain points? What are their success stories? Because even from a success story, you can learn something as well, right? What are their challenges? And because I think the more people are open to communicate and really talk things out, or talk about things, be it personal or professional, I think it's a benefit for all parties involved. Talk, listen, discuss, be open to other ideas and opinions. You know, don't be stuck in your ways. Be flexible. This is also, I think, one key that I would hope to impart on the younger generation is try to be flexible. Try to be flexible in your thinking, in your understanding, in your openness to others. Be flexible to change, because if you're not flexible, then you're more rigid, you're stuck in your ways, and then life will become more difficult, because sometimes you need to change. Change is a good thing. Don't fear change. Change is a good thing, because it's just making us better. And changing, you know, managing change is difficult for any organization, for any individual. But know that the only constant in life is change. That's the only constant, right? We continually change. Our bodies change, our mind change. Just doing this today is a little bit leaving my comfort zone. It's never easy to give an interview and to come over smooth and silky, so to speak, but the more you practice, the easier it will be. And don't fear it. Just go for it. You know, you've come this far. You know, be thankful of how far you've come, wherever in life you are. Even if you're just starting out, you're better than a month ago, a year ago, or 2 years ago. And every day you change and you learn. And even if you think, yeah, but today I didn't learn anything, yeah, but you went through various experiences. You went from home to work, and you did something at work, you maybe heard something, you read something. You're constantly changing, and we are constantly getting wiser and more smart. And at the end of the day, it's a perfect time to live. You have the knowledge of the world in your pocket. You don't know something, look it up. If you don't know something, it's better if somebody comes to you, let's say you're a leader, you're newly in your position, and one of your subordinates, one of your team comes to you with a question that you don't know. The best thing to do is just say, sorry, I don't know, let me look it up, or let me gather some information, or maybe we can work together on this, rather than trying to, sorry my English, bullshit your way through an answer, because it's not helpful for you, nor it is for them. Just say, listen, I don't know, let me find out, and I'll get back to you. Things like that is, few things you can do, make life a little bit easier. I mean, everybody has stress, right? Everybody is faced with things we know nothing about. Even if you work with somebody for 20 years, you still know only a fraction of their life and what they're going through. So again, treat people nice, because you don't know what they're going through at that point in time. You yourself have your experience, and sometimes you have a bad day. Maybe a fight with the wife, or somebody cut you off and almost got into an accident on the way to work. It's a stressful time we live in. So make the best of it. Really make the best of it, and give people a chance. And yeah, just be yourself. That's another thing. Try not to be somebody that you're not. Be genuine, be authentic, be yourself, because then it's easier to just go through life if you don't have to put up a face or a front, or oh, I acted like that to this person, so when I meet him I have to do like exactly like that, but it's not your true self. So be yourself. It's at the end of the day, it's easier to go through life if you're just being your authentic self. Yes, I have actually a few projects. Like I already mentioned, I'm looking now for a literary agent or a publishing house that is interested to publish my fiction as well as my new non-fiction. I've just launched in July this year a startup called Proquanet, which stands for Professional Quality Network. It's a new way of networking based on people that are trusted. So I think many people are on LinkedIn, especially if you're a business professional. LinkedIn is almost a requirement, but LinkedIn is also very aggressive. LinkedIn is all about promoting yourself, trying to sell yourself, pushing yourself. It's about your position, the company you work for, your working history. With Proquanet, I'm trying to approach it from a different point of view in terms of I've worked for 30 plus years and I've built up a network of people that I worked with, or friends from university or high school or even earlier, that you've built over the many years. You've built up a high level of trust. And if you're looking for a product or a service, many times you would think, oh yeah, my friend has that, you contact them, right away you have your answer. But many times you don't have that in your inner circle of somebody that you know is doing that or providing this product or service. So most people go either on LinkedIn or on Google and go through a very long, extensive internet search to look for a potential company. And let's say you come up with 3. You call, the first thing you do, most people do, is send an email, info@whatever.com on the website. Many times here in Thailand, you don't even get a response. But you insist you still want to speak to somebody at this company. You call the number on the website, and most of the time you come to an answering machine, which takes you 5 minutes to click 0 for operator. But then you're at an operator who sends you to the customer service department. I'm creating a business listings for decision makers. We're trying to position ourselves as an alternative before you go on your Google search. Check Proquanet first, because there everybody's vetted. We're all connected by a personal connection and trust. So anybody there has the necessary experience, knowledge and network, and that is our focus, what they bring in terms of experience, knowledge and network, not where they work or what their position is or what their working history is. What do you bring as value to our community? So that's one thing I'm doing, is the startup. I'm still looking for coaching. So any company that is looking for some transformation, maybe low profitability, high turnover, low engagement, people are not motivated, or maybe foreign companies that want to build a bridge between the foreign investors and the local team. I can do that because of my Thai linguistic abilities. So still looking for potential companies there that want to have some coaching services. And then of course the publishing of my book, agents or basically anyone that is looking for a CEO, COO, managing director, general manager in manufacturing and operations, maybe to take over or whatever. I'm always open for that as well, to step back in the corporate world. Whatever comes first, I'm open to try many things, excited for all, and won't say no to anything.